like, that part of the story blew me away because, like, I look at John Bosco like, "Oh my gosh, he did everything he could." Like, he just seemed like this man of immense faith and immense trust, and there's already so many boys in there, but, like, how many more, like, if he still would have trusted even more? And so I love that looking in my life, like, how little I trust, honestly, from the day to day, like, how many more souls I don't even realize that could make it to heaven if I just trusted at a moment's notice, like bringing a meal over to an elderly neighbor, or you get, like, that tug on your heart to say to something to a random stranger you see in Costco or whatever, like, those are just, like, movements of the Holy Spirit that I feel like so often I ignore, but you never know, like, how many more people could be in that archway to heaven if we just trusted a little bit more.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Saintly Sidekicks. Today we have with us Haley Dessauer, who is just an incredible artist. I am so excited to share her work with you guys. Her shop is called This Little Fiat, and she just has a huge portfolio of gorgeous Catholic imagery, lots of saints, lots of Mother Mary, just incredible, comforting images that any home or church would be blessed to have. And she is also the mother of four children. So incredible work that she's doing both with her kids and with her shop. And I'm so excited to have her here with us. And Haley, for those who don't know you, would you introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, my name is Haley Dessauer. You pretty much covered all of it. I'm a Catholic sacred artist from Southern Illinois, and I say that I primarily work with oil paints generally. I really like to do detailed oil paintings. But depending on like when we have babies or when I'm pregnant or postpartum, sometimes I do charcoals and it just depends. So I kind of do all kinds of things. But yeah, I am first and foremost a mom. The sacred art stuff kind of gets crammed into different parts of my day wherever we can fit it in. But most of my day is kind of just me ping ponging between like homeschooling my kids and doing dishes and doing laundry and back to homeschooling and all those things. And I just paint whenever I can find a few minutes. Sometimes it's like 10 or 15 minutes at a time, and sometimes I might be blessed with like a whole hour. It's very rare nowadays to get that big chunk of time, but yeah,
Do you
that's
feel like with your art, has that sort of helped you feel more balanced in your motherhood a little bit? Was that a journey finding that and kind of creativity with motherhood? How did that go for you?
yeah. I mean, it's a journey, and it changes every single season. I definitely think it helped me. It helped me kind of establish, I think, a prayer life. Just because whenever I'm painting, there's just I don't know, it's half the time, like, there's always interruptions, but whenever I am painting, it's just a different form of prayer than I think I'd experienced before, and it kind of gave me not really an excuse to pray, but just different than before. Because like, in the mornings, I would wake up before, like, whenever I had just, like, my first 2 little kids, and I tried to pray, and then they'd wake up, and, it was interesting whenever I started to paint again, because 'cause I've been painting since I was, like, 16, but I took a long break when I first became a mom, um, once I had started painting again after I think our second one, it was just like they would be off to their side reading the Bible and then like their little Bibles or playing or doing whatever they wanted, and then I would be painting, and it was just like this opportunity for a different form of prayer. I don't know if I'm making any sense at all. But yeah, it definitely felt like there was something missing, and then whenever like I started adding that into our life, I don't know. I had a more of a connection with God than I think I had before. But again, it depends on the season because right now I feel like I'm scatterbrained all the time with a newborn and whatnot.
I can see that in your art. I can see that there's emotion in it and there's prayer and connection with God in it. I really do think art is just taken to a whole nother level when there's the person creating it is having a spiritual connection when it's happening. And I feel that when I look at your art. I can feel a pull on my own heart. So I definitely feel and I can relate to that as a mom, just trying to find time. And it's like 15 minutes here, 5 minutes there, but it kind of just gives you a little bit of a boost to keep going with the day and
Yes, yes.
a little bit
I
more of a connection.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because used to, before I had kids and I would paint, it was kind of like that. I don't know if it was really like a prideful mindset per se, but it was kind of like, oh, like here's these pieces, and who knows, somebody out there might, resonate with these, and Lord willing, maybe, hopefully that still occurs. But most of the time when I finish paintings in particular now, it's almost like God tries to reveal certain things about him or about me that needs to be changed when I'm doing a painting, and it almost feels like it's almost in a sense, like, for my sanctification in some ways I didn't even know I needed before. And so it's interesting to see how I don't know, how God kinda uses that to help me out as a mom too.
That's beautiful. That's incredible. And especially very thoughtful and wise of you to be able to look back and see that and see the growth and maybe the things that he was trying to say to you through your art. And I think that's a good lesson that, especially in motherhood, prayer can take so many different forms if you allow it to. And I think so many moms can get frustrated if they're not, doing the traditional sit down and quiet prayer. It feels like that's being taken from you in a
Mhm.
way because there's just so little time for that as a mom. But to be able to find different forms of prayer for yourself, it's a journey, but it sounds like you've done a really good job with finding that and recognizing the different seasons as well, I think is huge. So you've done a great job with that too.
Thanks. I'm still figuring it out. I still don't have it figured out. Every season is new and different, but
And how old is your like what age range are your kids?
so our oldest just turned 7, so we have a 7-year-old, 5-year-old, 2.5-year-old, and then a 4-month-old. So, it's
We
fun.
have we have literally the exact same age of children except for the 4-month-old. I have like an almost 2-year-old, like he'll be 2 in October, and
Mhm.
then a 7-year-old who's almost 8 and a 5-year-old who just turned 5. That's crazy.
Yeah. It is so funny. It's funny. I can't tell my husband, we used to say like, "Oh, our life is a circus, our life is a circus." And since this 4th one has been born, I'm like, "Ok, our life is a circus. We are no longer the ringleaders, we are the clowns, just stumbling around all of the time." But it's fun, it's fun.
And do you you said you homeschool, so that's a whole nother level of commitment. And do you feel like you get to kind of form their faith since they're home all the time, or how is that going at this point?
That's the goal, that's the goal, and that's something we might talk about a little bit when we talk about John Bosco, but yeah, so we homeschool. I'm still new. Like I said, our son is 7, and I feel like we're just now dipping our toes into like we are in this, like we are homeschooling and this is a big deal. So, um but yeah, the faith formation is by far my favorite part about how we can just bring faith and the saints and the Bible and the catechism into like every part of our homeschooling day. And I feel like it keeps me grounded in particular, just staying focused on our faith all day long since I'm trying to bring that into our kids' education as well.
And so you mentioned John Bosco, and I know very little about him. And all I know is that he educated, I think it was young boys, right? Or
Mhm.
all ages. Tell me a little bit about him. I don't know very much.
So, John Bosco, don't know where you want me to start with him. John Bosco, he was a priest, and yes, he had a strong devotion to just like education and faith formation of young boys in particular. He lived in the late 1800s, and I think it was while he was in seminary or studying to become a priest. He visited a prison, and at prison he was seeing young boys there like as young as 12 or 13. And it was kind of one of those understood things that if a young boy during that time were to end up in prison, then he would probably be in and out of prison most of his life. And so he saw that and his heart was broken because just in where he lived, I think it was in Turin, there was just so many boys on the streets, either like orphaned or not coming from good homes or just didn't have access to education. And so he started, I think it started out actually as um like just like a Sunday school thing. He was doing on the side, like on the road. He would grab a few boys and he'd be like, let's learn about the faith. And then those boys would go tell other boys, and before you knew it, it was just like this like this snowball effect of like all hundreds and hundreds of boys coming to learn things from John Bosco, and eventually he started like a traveling, he called it his oratory, a traveling oratory where they would go and they would learn, and they kind of bounced from place to place to place, just like having trying set buildings for where they would have a school. And I think it took a long time before they actually had like their own like consistent place to come visit. But that's him in a nutshell. He had all kinds of dreams throughout his life, which is like my favorite part about him. But yeah, faith formation, education is a big part of John Bosco. Um, yeah, that's
And
him in
but
a nutshell. There's so much more to him, but
and when you say dreams, do you mean like aspirations or like literal dreams
he
where
had
like God appeared to him or something?
he had actual dreams. He called them dreams, but, like, you can read about them. They were more like visions. I think he had over like 100 in his life, and he would write them down. I think he would read them to his boys, and they're beautiful. Like, I read them and I sometimes, like, I just weep because 'cause they're very wonderful. Um, but yeah, there's just tons and tons of them. I can talk about some of them if you want, or I don't know. They're just wonderful, but they helped. A lot of them had to do with just like his mission of educating these young boys.
And have you felt like do you turn to him for help during homeschooling, or how has he kind of been a help for you?
Yes. So I think it was last year we were kind of our family was going through a really like just tough patch where just like everything that could go wrong felt like it was going wrong, and it was right at the beginning of like the homeschool year. And, so I remember trying to, like, prep for homeschool for our kids last year, and I'm like, "We need a patron saint. Like, we need a patron saint of our homeschool this year." And I think, I don't know if it's Ignatius of Loyola or somebody is technically the patron saint of education or something, and I've never had a strong connection with him. Maybe one day, I don't know. But John Bosco, we had, like, tons of John Bosco holy cards in our house, so I was like, "Let's just do John Bosco," and I put him up on our little bitty chalkboard that we have. And then I just started learning more and more about him slowly throughout the year, and every once in a while, I'd, like, pick up a little random booklet, and there would be one of his dreams that just, like, laid out in a booklet, like those random Catholic pamphlets that are just all around the house under the couch cushions and everything, like, I was just, like, finding them everywhere, and I was like, "This guy is amazing." But yeah, just learning about him, I don't know, I'm just imagine him, like, surrounded by all of these wild boys all of the time, and, like, our 2.5-year-old, he is like, he's such a firecracker, and we love him so much, but it was last year in particular, I think he had just turned 2 when we started homeschooling. I'd be trying to do homeschool and we'd have math tiles or something on the counter, and he'd be, like, on the table diving and, like, trying to put them in his mouth, and I'm like, "This just feels insane." Like, I feel like everything is just falling apart all the time, and then everything, like, behind the scenes, like, in life was crashing in, and just looking at John Bosco and seeing how he chose to educate all of these boys, I just kept thinking, like, "If you can do this, John Bosco, and you're a priest, like, I can do this with just, like, these 3 little ones I had at the time." Um, but I was definitely drawn to, his focus on education, kind of he focused on the whole child as far as, like, academics and, like, physical education and all these different things, but I don't know the exact quote, but he talked about them not being the end. So, like, all these fun things we do, like, learning our math and learning our reading and going outside and getting fresh air and all these different things, like, they're wonderful and they are good, but they are not the end. They are a means to the end, which the end being our children's salvation. Um, and I just really, really loved that, especially in homeschooling when, I'm just like that is the goal. We're trying to bring faith into a huge part of our day, and trying to keep that in mind. And yeah, so he's played a big part in that.
I can absolutely relate to the child on the table while you're trying to homeschool. I've literally had that same situation. Our youngest is my first climber, so I was not prepared for it at all. But yeah, he'll be on the table, he'll destroy their work, and they'll just,
Yes.
because his little feet and then it crinkles in there. So
Do
it's
you
just
homeschool as well then?
I do. Yeah.
We need to sit down and talk then because like, bounce ideas around. That's funny because that was your 3rd one. That was our 3rd one was the first climber as well, and it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is insane, and it's so fun, but holy moly.
Yes. Yeah, it's a whole 'nother realm of chaos, and, with, trying to with my daughter, it was easier because it was just 1 that I was homeschooling, but now it's the 2 that I'm trying to homeschool while keeping the 3rd from basically causing complete chaos, and
Yeah.
it's a juggling act for sure, and I your story I know will relate to so many homeschool moms because most of my friends now, they didn't all start out this way, but most of them are homeschooling now, and some of them have, 5 kids, 8 kids, and I just look at them and think, "I don't know how that's possible,"
I
but
know. I know.
and I think it helps as the kids get older, because then the older kids can help with the younger ones sometimes, or also the older kids are just more independent in their schoolwork, and that sort of balances it out, but it's just a good reminder that just one day at a time, and that, like you said, we're educating the whole person, so it's a good battle that we're fighting, that we're providing them with this foundation of not just learning, but really enjoying the process of learning and understanding what it's all for. My daughter in particular, it's been really rewarding to just watch her. We have a Catholic curriculum, which thank God for Catholic curriculums, because otherwise I would be so lost on how to interweave everything, and it just makes it so much easier. But her reading material is basically reading the life of Jesus right now.
Mhm.
And I definitely did not get immersed in that at her age. And she's just like, that's her favorite thing to do right now. She asks me for more time with it, is to read this material. Now, math is a whole nother story where it's like pulling teeth to get her to
Oh,
do it.
yes.
But yeah. So, but just that is a reward in of itself, that she's enjoying reading about the life of Christ and wanting more of that. So I think a lot of moms will definitely relate. And I really appreciate everything you said about John Bosco, because I didn't know that it started out as him kind of trying to pull these kids into a better living situation and a better just overall lifestyle. And you mentioned, so the dreams where, or could you maybe talk about one of those dreams where, is it God that's speaking to him, or is he just like envisioning things?
So there's a lot it depends. So I'm reading a book right now that has, like I think there's, like, 40 of his dreams in there. There's a lot of Our Lady speaking to him. There was one really I think his most well-known saints are, like, at the beginning, um, like, when he was a child, I think, like, maybe when he was 9, Our Lady, and I think even Jesus spoke to him in a dream, and they're kinda, like, just, like, these visions, dreams that kinda seem confusing at first, and then they kinda gain meaning over time. Some of them were prophetic. But there's a lot of Our Lady just speaking to him and encouraging him, just on this path that God had called him down. But I don't know which one to talk about. I love there's one that the rose-covered pergola, which is really good. It's kinda like a rose pathway that he walks down, so I would look up that one for sure. But one of my all-time favorite one is a dream he had, um, for where he went and he saw Dominic Salvio. Do you know who he is? He's a saint.
Little bit.
I
Yeah.
don't know tons about him, but he was actually a student of John Bosco, which I initially did not know that, and then I read across it in a book. I'm like, "Wait a minute, really? Like, John Bosco and Dominic Salvio, like, they knew each other?" So Dominic Salvio, real quickly, he was a very young boy when he died. I think he was, like, 14 when he died, but he was a student of John Bosco. He was a very virtuous little boy. But John Bosco has this dream for where he thinks he's in heaven at first, and he sees, Dominic Salvio coming with, like, all kinds of, like, angels around him, and this is after Dominic had died,
Mm.
and he's talking to Dominic Salvio, and, Dominic's revealing and talking to him about all these different things, and there's this part of the dream for where he turns, like, sideways, and there's, like, this big archway, and inside there's, like, hundreds of thousands of young boys inside of this archway, and I don't remember what it says over the arch, but it's like the Salesian because John Bosco started a new order called the Salesian Order, after Francis de Sales just side note, for where all of these boys who, after they would like finish their education with him, if they wanted to go on and become priests, they could go on to seminary, become priests. And there were so many, like hundreds and thousands of vocations that resulted from this within, even within his lifetime. It's amazing. Okay, back to the dream. He so he sees this archway, and it's like the Salesian archway or something, and there's all of these boys inside. And John Bosco asked Dominic Salvio, he's like, who are all those people and who are all those boys in there? And Dominic was like, well, those are all of the boys that have, essentially made it to heaven because of, what you have done, and listening and trusting to God, and inviting all of these boys to learn from you and everything. But Dominic Savio, but he says, how many more boys there would be there if you just would have trusted a little bit more, if you would have had a little bit more faith. And like that part of the story blew me away, because like I look at John Bosco like, oh my gosh, he did everything he could. Like he just seemed like this man of immense faith and immense trust. And there was already so many boys in there, but like how many more? Like if you still would have trusted even more. And so I love that, looking in my life, like how little I trust, honestly, from the day to day, like how many more souls I don't even realize that could make it to heaven if I just trusted at a moment's notice, like bringing a meal over to an elderly neighbor, or you get like that tug on your heart to say to something to a random stranger you see at Costco or whatever. Like those are just like movements of the Holy Spirit that I feel like so often I ignore. But you never know, like, how many more people could be in that archway to heaven if we just trusted a little bit more.
Thank you for sharing that. I love, like, that's such a nice image to have in my head of the ultimate goal is not only to get myself to heaven, but to get as many people like not like under that archway. You know what I mean? Under that archway of heaven. And like you said, what a simple yet very challenging task of just trusting more. And that like it doesn't have to be like we don't have to be these capable people. We just have to trust the one that is capable and move with that. That's wow. Thank
Mhm.
you.
I
I'm
just feel
definitely
like everything always comes back to trust. Like, every issue I have in my life and everything is just like, do you trust him? Like, do you trust God? Because this will be solved if you just trust him. And at least that seems to be a reoccurring theme in my life as of lately.
mine too, for sure. Wow, that is incredible. And so with his like work and you've done I love the I think it's a charcoal drawing that you did of him, John Bosco. So he do you have that have you do you like hang up your work in your house or like do your kids get to see it?
They do. They do. I have this really weird thing. It just feels strange for me hanging up my own art in the house, because like I see it a lot, like when people buy a print or whatever, and I'm packaging. I see them all the time. For sometimes I'm just like, I don't even want to look at my own art anymore. But as far as the saints, I have been wanting to hang up John Bosco like in our homeschool room, and then I have a Mother Teresa and Saint John Paul II one. I'm like, I might try to put some of the charcoal saints up. But yeah, the kids do see them, but it's kind of like, again, I think they're kind of like me, where they just see them all the time. So whenever we do get an art piece that's not by me into our house, it's like, it feels like a really big deal. Like
Yeah.
when we find something at a thrift store. I don't know if that answered your question or not, but
No, absolutely. That's really sweet. And it's so fun to get kids involved in that aspect of your work, just to let them see what's going on behind the scenes. And that's so nice that they get to see your work that often, that you're doing so well that people are enthralled with it and that they get to watch you send it out into the world. That's so cool. I love that you're doing that. And, the other saint that you mentioned to me that has been inspirational to you was Julian of Norwich, who I also knew very little about, and I was looking her up to prepare for this, but so
there's
how
not
did
a whole lot about her on her out there.
yeah, how did she come into your life? Like, when did that happen?
She is like, she's like the most wild saint story, because I think there's been a lot of saints in my life who they like John Bosco, where they're slowly revealing themselves to me or stalking me, and I'm slowly learning more and more about them. But Julian of Norwich is like one of those for where she just showed up like very quickly and then she exited, and it was like I think one of like the biggest forms of intercessory prayer I've experienced from the saints. So I don't know if you'd prefer me to talk about her first or tell this story because I have to like set the stage for her entering.
Yeah. However you wanna go.
Okay, well, I'll just tell it from the beginning. So it has to do with my vocational discernment whenever I was in college. I did not know who Julian of Norwich was at all. I never heard of her. It's hard to find any information about her. I think there is more information now than there was like 10 years ago when I first learned about her. Whenever I was in college or about to go into college, graduating high school, like I was 99.9% certain that God was calling me to religious life. And so I had like this plan set out for what I was going to go to college, and I was going to go to school for teaching to be an educator. Um because and this is quote unquote, and it's so funny to say it now, because I always wanted to make sure that I was surrounded by children. Which in hindsight I'm like, wow, that is like in hindsight, like that shows that my vocation might have lied in motherhood a little bit. Um but, I had, like, several younger siblings whenever I was growing up who were, like, my life. I loved them. I think they are the reason that, like, I think my faith is so strong is because of my younger siblings and caring for them, but they were substantially younger than me. And so it felt like my whole life I had been surrounded by young kids, and I didn't want that to stop if I were gonna be a sister. So I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna go to school for teaching. I'm gonna graduate in 3 years. I'm gonna knock out all the summer classes. I'm gonna take 21 credit hours because this is what I think God is calling me to do." And, I was totally going about discernment process wrong because I was just like, "Oh, no, this is what God wants me to do." And I wasn't asking, I wasn't questioning. And so when I ended up meeting, my now husband, his name is Caleb, um, I ended up meeting him, um, and in a library whenever I was in college. And God was making it very known that I needed to, think about pursuing maybe marriage or, like, just start dating him or something. And I was very much um, being rebellious, I guess, about it from, like, I don't know, from, like, a holy perspective, I don't know, but I was very confused. I'm like, "No, God, you wanted me to go this route. Like, I have this plan, it's set in stone, like, I'm gonna be a teacher, like, this is what we're gonna do." And so then whenever I met my husband, it felt like everything. I loved my husband. I hope this doesn't come across the wrong way. I love my husband, I love him now, but I was very, very confused. And it was just this long it was a very long process, but once I finally, um, understood that that's what God wanted me the path he wanted me to pursue, um, I felt such peace. But then there was one day in particular for where, like, I went to bed and I had this realization where I was like, "Oh my gosh, like, I am in school to go to be a teacher." And I knew that, like, if I went on to become a mom, I would wanna stay at home. And I'm like, so now I'm, like, halfway through this degree that I don't necessarily want to be pursuing, like, after I graduate. And then there was, like, all of these thoughts that came into my head. And like, "Oh my gosh, like, we're gonna have to go, like I'm gonna have to, like, figure out there's gonna be, like, house one day. I'm gonna have to figure out how to buy a house, or I have to figure out health insurance for kids," and, like, all of these things that I had never allowed myself to even think about. It felt like they were crashing in, like, all around me, and I started to get really, really scared and, like, panicky, and I went to bed one evening just, like, really just like, "Oh my gosh, like, what am I doing?" Not like, it's not from my husband perspective. I wanna separate that. Like, I knew God was asking me to be with him, but it was, like, all of this other stuff that was, like, this wasn't part of the plan. And so the next morning, I woke up with that, like, scared, anxiety-filled feeling again. And I remember as soon as I opened my eyes, there was this phrase that immediately popped into my head, and it was, "All shall be well, all shall be well, all manner of things shall be well." And I immediately was like, "What is that?" Like, that is not me. Like, I used the word shall, like, the word shall was in there, and all manner of things shall be well. That's not how I speak at all. And I was like, "What is this?" but it brought such comfort. And so I started saying it all day long whenever I would start to get a lot of anxiety about the future and the unknown. I would say, all shall be well, all shall be well, all manner of things shall be well. And by the end of that day, that day, I felt like such peace with just this path that God was calling me down, such peace and trust in the things that I had no idea were going to look like after college whenever I thought I had things figured out. And so I had been repeating it all day long, and at the end, of that day, I had found out that it was Saint Julian of Norwich's feast day, and that is her quote, "All shall be well, all shall be well, all manner of things shall be well." And the cool thing is I found that out, right? I found this out because I had, like, logged on to social media for the first time that day, and it was, like, the first thing that popped up was one of the sisters from the monastery that I had been considering. It was technically Saint Julian was technically her patron saint, and so she had shared it. She's like, "Hey, it's my patron saint's feast day, Julian of Norwich," and she had put it, and so it was actually the sister from the monastery was the one who, like, ended up, like, letting me know it's St. Julian of Norwich feast day, and here I was. I don't know, it was just so cool. It was very cool. I had no idea who she was, and she had kinda just came into my life, like, in a moment of need and just spelled, like, all of my anxieties.
Wow, so when that quote came into your head, you had no idea who she was at the time?
No, I did not know who she was. I had never heard that quote in my life. It was the wildest thing. I don't think I've ever had anything like that happen before, where just like a quote comes in. Because this was like 10 years ago. Now I'm starting to see that quote more and more often. But like 10 years ago, like I just feel like I had never heard her. People never really talked about her very much. And just recently she's starting to get a little bit more popularity. But yeah,
That's amazing. Oh
yeah.
my goodness, I have, like, chills. Well, yeah, because I had never even heard of her, and that quote was, like, the one thing that I like, when I was reading about her, it kinda jumped out at me, and I was like, "Wow, that's perfect for our like, today's world just needs this, like, plastered on every wall." That's amazing that she just put it into your head and into your heart,
It's
and
weird.
on her feast day
On her
of
feast
all.
day. That's why I am, like, obsessed with the saints' feast days because of that one instance, and there's been so many other little things, like, I'll finish a painting on a particular saint's feast day that actually applies to a painting, it's like, if you pay attention to the saints' feast days, it's wild. I don't know, just, like, random little things that I guess don't always matter. If it happens on a feast day for me, I'm like, "Oh, that matters. That's such a big deal."
Yeah, I do think, yeah, I mean, paying attention to those little details can sometimes just real make us realize how little we notice that is
Mhm.
actually going on, that God is orchestrating and in our favor. That is such a it's so funny that you told that story about you and your husband, because that my husband and I had a similar kind of situation where I was discerning religious life, and he was sort of like, I'm gonna just not date for a long time
That's
and
what my
figure
husband
out.
did too.
Oh my god.
We'll have to, like, share our vocation stories, like, in detail sometime. That's exactly what happened.
Gosh, that is too funny. Well, and obviously God has orchestrated this conversation. There's just so many. Oh my goodness. Yes, and that is exactly what happened with the 2 of us, where I had to we both had to sort of realize God was calling us to a different thing than we had been planning. And I kind of always wanted to be a mom, but it was at this point in my life where I thought maybe it wasn't I wasn't supposed to get married, and I was like, "Well, maybe I can be a mom in a different capacity and do that as a religious." And then we sort of started hanging out more as friends, and then we're, like, both falling in love with each other and like, "Wait, this wasn't part of the
Yes,
hold
yeah.
on a minute."
Yeah. That's so lovely to hear because I feel like when I hear vocation stories from, other people, it's always, like, the opposite, like, people, like, who were pursuing marriage or wanting to get married, and then they go off to religious life, but I haven't talked to many other people where they were seriously considering religious life and then were led down married life, and so, yeah, it's lovely to hear that from somebody else.
Yeah, I have never heard anyone whose path was as closely related to mine, and well, in Saint Zelie, I think you, mentioned her story on your website, but her and, Saint Louis Martin kind of did the same thing where
Yes.
she was
I wept
wanting.
when I read that about them, like, when she wept on her wedding day, I had to tell my husband, I'm like, "You don't understand." Like, I felt for her. I felt for her, I'm like, "Yes," because religious life just seems so, like, it's like And I know, like, I'm idolizing it in my head, like, you don't just get to sit and pray all the time. But, like, I think, like, now in motherhood, I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I don't feel like I don't get to pray ever," and just, like, that thought of being able to sit quietly in a church and pray or whatever, or live, like, a cloistered life, sometimes it feels lovely, but when Zelie, on her wedding day, when she wept just because she saw that beauty of that vocation, it didn't mean that she was sad to marry Louis, and I told my husband, and he totally understood, which I feel like most men wouldn't understand reading that passage. I'm rambling again, sorry.
No, it's all wonderful, and I love everything that you've been sharing, and I think it's so relatable. And also just I feel like your story and what you were just saying about Saint Zelie and St. Louis, God definitely calls us to what's challenging for us as individuals, because I think for some people religious life sounds, very scary and challenging and maybe even lonely. But then like for someone who that feels that religious life sounds really nice and cozy, God's like, well, sanctification is going to be something
Yes.
that's a little more out of your comfort zone.
Yes. Yeah, yeah.
And I really, and obviously you've been so influential in your children's life and you're getting to be a teacher, homeschooling. I
I
mean, I know
know.
it's different.
Yeah, it's wild how all these different things, like, I get to be an artist, I get to be a teacher. One of the things I used to say when I was in high school was, like, when everybody would be, like, talking about what they wanted to be whenever they grew up or, like, their career path, I remember secretly inwardly thinking, like, "Is there, like, a saint historian job title out there somewhere? Like, can I be a saint historian?" And I don't know if that is actually a thing, but, like, now I'm not a saint historian, but it feels like I still get to, like, study the saints a lot. So it's kinda just fun how God just still, like, he still it's, like, kinda like full circle thing. I still get to do these things that I wanted to do whenever I was younger.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And obviously you are doing God's will. It's clear in the peace that you feel and the fruit of your labor with your children, and I just everything that you've said has been so healing even to my heart, so thank you so much for coming on and talking today. Like, it's been so surreal, this every conversation that I've had, about the saints with different people, it's like it's a message that was written for me, and even just I found you by looking for religious art, and just so like and then reading your website, there were so many connections with you that I found, and then everything that you've just said. So thank you for having the courage and vulnerability for coming on and just chatting with me. It's been a huge blessing, even just for me, and I'm sure it will be for the viewers as well.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. I hope I didn't say, and like 50 times. I've never been interviewed before, so it was a good experience to have, and it was lovely talking to you and meeting you.
I say and like all the time, so it's okay. I think if people want genuine and authentic, and scripted is just, I mean, who needs it? So
Yeah, yeah, I need real people. I need real people like me. Just like the saints. Like I love hearing story about saints who were real people and they were like me and they went through the same problems. So same with online and YouTube and all the podcasts and things. Like we need real people to help us to become saints.
absolutely.